Thank you for tuning in to the latest edition of the 12 Kyle podcast. Whether you're listening during your commute, while working out, or just relaxing at home, we appreciate you. Every download, every listen, and every subscription means a lot. Up next, the 12 Kyle podcast.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for listening. Thank you for downloading. And thank you for subscribing to the latest edition of the 12 Kyle podcast. I am your boy 12 Kyle. Man, check this out. On this episode, what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk about the best 5 from LA. Now, I came to this episode because just the other day I was going through some of my old podcast episodes, and I realized that I had done an episode called The Best of NYC. And it was based off a meme that I saw. And in the meme, what they asked was like the best MCs from each particular borough in New York City. And I was like, you know what? I hadn't really, and I thought about it. I was like, have I even talked about, the West Coast hip hop at all? And I know that I have. I've touched on it in some episodes. But not really a deep dive as far as the particular MCs or rappers, if you will. And I was like, okay, this would be a good topic to tackle. First and foremost, before I even get into my 5, I'm a huge fan of West Coast hip hop. Always have been. And the thing that I love is that, at least from the time that I started listening, it's always been authentic. And that's, harder to do nowadays than it was back then. But I go way back. And it was just West Coast rap, but it always meant something to me just because of where I started. So let me tell you about where I started. First and foremost, if you're not sure what West Coast rap is or West Coast hip hop, it's a subgenre of hip hop. Obviously created in the western part of the United States in the mid to late 80s, early 90s. It was the perfect response to the dominance of the hip hop and rap that we received on the East Coast. West Coast music is known for its distinctive sound, lyrical themes, vibe, if you will. And obviously it's produced legendary artists from NWA, Dr. Dre, Eazy-E, Ice Cube, Snoop Dogg, just to name a few. I don't even want to start getting into names because I'll forget somebody, but just to give you an idea. And the music, like I said, came on in the mid 80s and it really took off. And some may say that it, there was a lull, if you will, in between there. But listen, music is music. And if it's dope, it's dope. And for me, I was someone who found the music and I didn't find it through the most traditional of means. So how was I introduced to West Coast rap? It's interesting because I was actually put on to the West Coast. Well, I guess let me first start by saying I grew up in South Carolina, Florence, South Carolina, to be exact. So it's a very small place in the state of South Carolina. And I had no direct access to, music. The way that I would get music was either my friends made tapes or you couldn't even listen to it on the radio because rap didn't get a lot of play on the radio back then. And it was called rap. It wasn't called hip hop, right? So I'm talking like 85. So you have the emergence of Run DMC and then subsequently LL, and Slick Rick, and acts like that in the East. But there was nothing, we weren't hearing anything out the West. And for me, I distinctly remember this like it was yesterday. It was right around our Christmas break. This was like 87. And I go over to my boy Jay Fresh's house. And Jay Fresh is an only child. and he's a huge rap fan. And so I go to his crib, and we're in his crib listening to music. And Jay Fresh was, at the time, was one of the few friends that I had who got an allowance, right? He got an allowance, and he would just go to the record store and buy tapes. And he was like, yo, I bought this new tape the other day. You need to hear it. And I'm like, okay, what is it? He was like, oh, it's West Coast. And that's all he kept saying. It was West Coast. He's like, man, it's West Coast, man. It's dope. It's West Coast. It's fresh. And I'm like, okay, well, I had heard of West Coast rap, but I'd only heard it in that particular frame, not actually hearing the music. And so he goes in his bag and he gets this tape. And he had this nice, at least for our time, this nice musical setup in his room with his boom box and speakers and stuff. And so he puts the tape in, and I just hear this voice booming out. Cruising down the street in my 6'4". And I'm like, yo, what is this? And he was like, listen, listen, listen. He puts his hand over his mouth and he tells me to listen. And the guy says, because the boys in the hood are always hard. Come talking that trash, we'll pull your car. No, nothing in life but to be legit. Don't quote me, boy, because I ain't said shit. And I was like, whoa, who is this? He's like, yo, this is NWA and the Posse. And so my next question was, who the hell is NWA and the Posse? And he's like, oh, this is Eazy-E. And I'm like, who the hell is Eazy-E? I know, Run DMC. I know LL Cool J. I don't know who Eazy-E is. I know UTFO. Who the hell is Eazy-E? And what the hell is an Eazy-E? And he had the tape for a couple of days, and I guess he had been reading the liner notes or whatever like that. But by the time he plays it for me, he's able to tell me who is who as far as rapping is concerned. And if you look at the cover of the tape, it lists the members of the group. And, even the name Dr. Dre didn't ring a bell because when he was in the World Class Wrecking Crew, I don't remember him being I don't remember them referring to him as Dr. Dre. I remember Yella, but that was it. And I don't know if Yella if he was rapping. I just remember the song "Turn Off the Lights" from the World Class Wrecking Crew. But even then, I never made the correlation that this Dr. Dre guy whose name is on this cover is the same guy. And I still don't know who the hell an Eazy-E is. But this Eazy-E fella is all over this tape. So he plays this tape for me. And man, I was blown away. I'd never heard the sound that they had. I had heard cussing on records before because I think by that time I had heard Luke before. But I was just like, yo, man, this is dope. And we listened to it. And I distinctly remember before I left his crib, I said, yo, I'm going to get a tape. If I get a blank tape, can you dub that for me? Now, folks, let me explain for you young folks what a dub means. A dub means to copy the tape. He had dual tape decks. Fresh had a little bit of money. So he had dual tape decks. So you put the NWA tape in, and then you put the blank tape in, and you play it, and you're recording in the other tape deck. And he said, man, I'm not giving you a copy. You got to go buy it. And I was like, what? And again, this is my boy. This is my boy. I've known this dude since we was 6, and now we're teenagers. And so I was just like, man, look, you got to give me a copy. He's like, all right, I'll give you one. I said, well, you got a tape? He's like, no, I don't have a tape. So I had to go home, get a tape, come back to his crib so he could dub it for me. And I played that tape literally until the tape popped. I knew every single word. I knew every single song from Dope Man to Fat Girl. Fat Girl is still funny. I got a Fat Girl on my jock. Man, that's so funny. Not politically correct, but I mean, NWA was never politically correct. Nonetheless, that was my first introduction to West Coast rap. And I was hooked. And they were rapping about stuff that I didn't know anything about. They were referencing parts of their city, parts of their streets. introducing gang terminology, introducing gang talk to us via the music. And I'll be honest, I didn't know what a gang was. I didn't know the difference between a Blood or a Crip. They could have been the same thing back then. I mean, again, this is what, 87? So I don't know. And then maybe the next year, I think I hear about on the news, they had talked about, because I think 88 was one of the most violent years in LA as far as gangs were concerned. And of course, they talked about it so negatively and like, don't go to LA, that type of thing. And so I was like, all of this stuff is new to me. And I had no idea. And so it went from NWA, and then probably the next person was Ice-T. Because I think Ron Pays was probably the next West Coast album that I heard. And this is the top of 88. And so Ron Pays, he's got 6 in the Morning on there. And then I remember him, and all of these, I'm being introduced to West Coast rap from Jay Fresh, my boy. I don't know where he's getting this music from. He's going to the record store and he's finding it. And what was interesting was, again, kids, there was no internet. So you had to literally leave your house and go to the record store and get the tape. But what was interesting was, and we never could really figure this out, but I could get my hands on a NWA tape or Eazy-E tape before I could get Run DMC. Now, technically, again, I'm in South Carolina. Geographically, I'm closer to New York City than I am to LA, but it didn't matter. I don't know if that's how the music was distributed or what, but the way that, and I remember going back and asking Jay Fresh, like, yo, how did you find this? And I distinctly remember him telling me, like, man, he said they had these tapes in a bin. And in the bin, it was just he said what caught his eye was that the tapes were being sold for like, I think tapes at that time were going for like $6. Well, these tapes were going for $3. And they just had a bunch of tapes in the bin. And I guess these were the tapes that weren't selling. So the owner of the record store is called Ray's Records. Shout out to Ray's, even though it's no longer in existence. I spent many a days in Ray's Records. Fresh saw the tape and he saw the cover and he was like, look, I'm going to buy this off the strength of the cover. And he bought it. And that's how he was introduced to Eazy-E and NWA, just off the album cover. He said he had no idea. He had never heard of these guys or anything. And so he bought the tape and subsequently gave it to me. And like I said, it went from NWA to Ice-T to 783. And then after that, by the time 88 rolls around, and I've said this before on this podcast, and I'll say it again, 1988 was the greatest year in hip hop. You got to remember, in 1988, by that time, 87, NWA and the Posse's out. By the time 88 rolls around, you got Easy Does It by Eazy-E. And then I think toward the end of 88, you get Straight Outta Compton. Man, by that time, you couldn't tell us we wasn't from LA. And it was because the music was just dope, man. I mean, like, there was nobody rapping or talking about the stuff that they were talking about. And again, we were very naive because we knew nothing about gang culture. We knew nothing about what they would later dub as gangster rap. But from the stories that Ice-T would tell to the stories that Ice Cube would tell, I mean, we were hooked. So that was my introduction to, West Coast rap. And it was we never referred to it as LA or Bay Area, because eventually, I would listen to Too Short. And I remember artists like King T. I had his tape too. Shout out to Act the Fool. And so like we would just gravitate toward this music. We heard a young DOC all over that NWA and the Posse tape. And then eventually, DOC drops in 89, one of the dopest debut rap albums ever, in my opinion. And so at least personally, I never referred to it as, it actually got to a point where I didn't even refer to it as West Coast rap. It was just West Coast. And so like we didn't differentiate between LA or the Bay, or then subsequently Seattle when Sir Mix-a-Lot came out. But what was interesting about the music was, one, West Coast music was always laid back. It was laid back music and it had a swing to it. And if you understand how music sounds phonically, when music has a swing to it, we as a people tend to gravitate towards it. And so for me, it was really a no-brainer. This music was dope. It was something I could swing to, something I could jam, bob my head to. Again, I really wasn't that invested in the lyrics. I mean, I was listening to the lyrics, don't get me wrong. But, you know, if Eazy-E talked about smoking some chick, did I really think he was smoking a chick? Probably not. You know, but here's the thing. We didn't know. So if Eazy said he slapped a chick, I assume that he did because he was gangster like that. So we tended to kind of take them for their word. So probably those first couple of albums, you know, you hear about dudes getting shot. So you just figure that, you know, people were getting shot and they did the shooting. And another thing, like, we had, at least I can't say we, well, I'll say it's especially me and Jay Fresh. We had no idea geographically of where any of this stuff was taking place. I knew it was from LA, right? And I knew this was coming out of LA. But I didn't know the difference between Los Angeles and Compton. In fact, I didn't know where the hell Compton, California was. Compton, for all I know, could have been Compton, Michigan. So we didn't know and we didn't care, but it was just dope music. But West Coast rap can be attributed to gangster rap. It's always been considered as the birthplace of gangster rap. You know, like I said, with artists like NWA, Eazy-E, Ice-T. They did a great job of shaping the rap scene. And, you know, the lyrics were raw. They were unapologetically in your face, but they also gave a backdrop to what was to come. If you listen to some of those earlier albums, you know, you get a song like Fuck the Police talking about, you know, really being consistently harassed by the police as a young black man. I mean, we related to that. Maybe not on that level because we weren't being harassed by cops per se in my hometown, but you would be profiled. You would definitely be profiled. And so we never took a liking to cops anyway. So when NWA said fuck the police, we was right there, like fuck the police. We didn't care. And then I think they definitely built a lot of momentum as we turned from the 80s into the 90s. And everything changed in 1992. Are you feeling nostalgic for the golden eras of rap and soul music? If so, tune in to the Rap Soul Podcast. We are your weekly journey through the 80s, 90s, and 2000s, spotlighting the music and the hidden gems that shaped the soundtrack of our lives. From the powerful beats to the soulful melodies, we bring you the best of the past with fresh insights and stories. Rediscover the music that defined a generation. Subscribe to the Rap Soul Podcast and enjoy the vibes. 1992, December 1992, Dre releases The Chronic. Everything changed. Everything. I mean, this album was groundbreaking. Regardless of how you feel about Dr. Dre, regardless of what you think about Dr. Dre, that album changed everything in hip hop. And it put him on a different level. It helped, well, at least that movement helped introduce us to a young Calvin Broadus, aka Snoop Doggy Dogg. And West Coast rap really took off. I mean, it was already at a high level, but it just went to the next level with, you know, Snoop's rhymes. Dre's production was crazy. And they laid the foundation for what was to become a solid foundation as far as West Coast hip hop. Death Row Records definitely made an impact. And we've talked about it on this podcast before, and it's worth repeating. Outside of that East Coast, West Coast stuff, you cannot underestimate, or you cannot, brush aside their impact on rap. And to be honest, the West Coast has birthed some of the best rappers we've heard, period. I'm not saying that just because I'm talking. I'm being honest. And on this episode, I'm going to give you my best 5 from LA. Now, before I give you my best 5, let me tell you my criteria. First, let me go back. I'm not going to differentiate between the cities. Like on the New York episode, it talked about the boroughs. Yeah, because you could talk about MCs from Queens, Brooklyn, Bronx, whatever. I understand, and I'm pretty sure that most of you listening understand that there's different parts of LA. So for the sake of time, I'm not going to differentiate between Compton, Watts, Inglewood, Long Beach, Gardena, Riverside. I'm not differentiating between, I'm just going to say LA. And so that's how I came to this, the best of LA. And I did it based on criteria. My criteria was for 3 things: your lyrics, your versatility, and your wordplay. Your lyrics, that's your bars. That is simply put your bars, how you got down on every song that you jumped on. Versatility, how versatile could you be? Could you get on with this MC or that MC or this rapper or that rapper and still, hold your own or dominate on a track? And be able to be versatile on different beats, because truthfully and technically, there are a lot of West Coast beats, and then there are quote unquote East Coast beats, and some people can't rap on East Coast beats. Particularly, there's some West Coast rappers that can't rap on East Coast beats. There's some East Coast rappers that can't rap over West Coast beats. It's one and the same. Same goes for the Southern rappers. So how versatile can you be? And last but not least, wordplay. How deep is what it is that you're saying? Anybody can talk about slapping a person, slapping a lady. Let me just rephrase. Anybody can talk about slapping a lady, but beyond that, what is it that you're talking about? So with that being said, I will give you my best 5 from LA. But before I give you my best 5, let me give you a couple of honorable mentions. I think, and these are no particular order, I gotta go with one MC that is very, very underrated, not only as a rapper, but as a producer, and that's the legendary DJ Quik. DJ Quik as a rapper can go. DJ Quik as a producer, incredible. He has a great ear and great sound. Love Quik. He was just outside my top 5. The next MC rapper, I'm sure if I asked you about a top 5, many of you, if you say the best in LA, you're going to put him in your top 5. He was just on the outside of my top 5. And that is The Game. Man, listen, when I first heard The Game, I was like, yo, who is this guy? Because he didn't rap. He sounded like he was from the West Coast, but he didn't rap like he was from the West Coast. His rhymes definitely more aggressive, in your face, a lot of name dropping, but you couldn't deny his talent. And then he came in with 50 and G Unit. He was out of here. So he's on my honorable mention list. Let's see. Next honorable mention. Again, these are in no particular order. From NWA, MC Ren. Whoo! Listen, Ren is cold. Ren is cold. Ren Ren probably still raps today as good as he did back in 1988. And that's saying a lot because he was dope as hell. Overshadowed somewhat, but dope as hell. Next. Razkaz. Whoo, listen. When you talk about bars, man, go listen to that Soul on Ice album. I think it was that 96? Yeah, Soul on Ice. Bruh. Crazy album. I love Razkaz. And let's see, one more. I'll go with Ice-T. Definitely Ice-T. Again, one of my introductions to West Coast. Ice, great storyteller. If you had him in your top 5, hey, listen, I'm not gonna argue with you. In fact, Quick, Game, Ren, Razkaz, and Ice-T really could be in anybody's top 5. Again, I'm not gonna argue with you. And you're not gonna argue with me because these are my top 5. Coming in at number 5 from the Dog Pound, Kurupt. Man, whoo, listen. Kurupt is a spitter. He's a rapper's rapper. Kurupt, even to this day, will wrap circles around almost anybody. This dude can hold his own on any track. I love listening to him rap. At the time of this recording, the Dog Pound came out with a new album, I should say. And it feels good just to hear him rapping again, even though he never stopped rapping. But he and Daz are a formidable team. But just him as an MC, him as a rapper, yeah, man, I'm rocking with him all day long. So he's going to be at number 5. Number 4, Nipsey Hussle. Listen, let me start by saying I know that there is sometimes a bias, and I've said this before, and it's worth repeating. I know that sometimes there's a bias when we're rating and ranking rappers who are no longer with us. But if you listen to Nipsey Hussle, and I mean, if you listen to Nipsey Hussle from the start until the finish, man, this dude was incredible. And one of the many things I could say about him is that you can see and feel and hear his growth in his rhymes. You know, if you go back to the Bullets Ain't Got No Names mixtapes, you know, he was rapping. I mean, he was rapping his ass off. But by the time he got the Victory Lap, he really was rapping his ass off. And there will be, just so I can let you guys know, there will be some album reviews from Nipsey's albums. Victory Lap, we're definitely going to review that one. And I'll be the first to admit, like, I knew his music, but I wasn't like on his music like that. And it wasn't until after he passed. And probably within this last 2 years, I've really done a deep dive in some of his older stuff. Man, this dude is incredible. And I never get tired of hearing stuff that I hadn't heard before. But no, Nip was one of those ones. And I mean, like, everything incorporated with his lifestyle was included in his music and what he was trying to do in his visions. And I think he talked the talk and walked the walk. Number 3. Whew. Number 3, I got Kendrick Lamar. Kendrick Lamar, aka K-Dot, phenomenal MC. I remember when I first heard him, the first time I heard K-Dot was on Section 80. And Section 80 for me was my favorite album from Kendrick up until he made To Pimp a Butterfly. So I'm one of the few people that have Section 80 over Good Kid, Mad City. And we're going to do an album review on, we did an album review on Section 80 and Good Kid, Mad City and To Pimp a Butterfly. Kendrick Lamar is crazy. The thing that I'll say about him is that he definitely has an opportunity to move from 3 up. Number 2, Snoop Dogg. Let it be known, as he famously once said at the 95 Source Awards, Snoop's cold, man. I mean, Snoop freestyles. Snoop has bars. Snoop has not lost a step, man. He has not. You go listen to him on the latest stuff. He hasn't lost a step. I heard him on the Dog Pound album, and he's still cold. And Snoop is in his 50s. I think Snoop may be older than me. I'm 51. Snoop's got to be like 52, 53. So he still got it, man. And he still smokes like a ton of weed, and he ain't lost his skill. But no, lyrics, versatility, wordplay, that's Snoop all day long. And at number 1, Ice Cube. Ice Cube holds down the number 1 spot. I don't think Ice Cube is just incredible. And the thing that I love about Ice Cube is he always stayed in the element of storytelling. And storytelling is something that we grew up on in the 80s. Like, you had to have good story rhymes. If you didn't have good story rhymes, you weren't considered to be a good MC. And Ice Cube is just that. He is an incredible MC. I think Ice Cube probably is in most people's top 15, maybe top 10. So yeah, that's my dude, man. That's my dude. Like I said, lyrics, versatility, wordplay. Ice Cube has it all. Storytelling. And he's still got bars. Now he's disappointed me with that We Be Clubbing, but that's beside the point. But Ice Cube is still an incredible MC. So there you have it. Kurupt at 5, Nipsey at 4, Kendrick Lamar at 3, Snoop at 2, and Ice Cube at 1. Now I know what some of you probably thinking. Where's Tupac? Pac ain't from LA. He's not. I know he claimed LA, but Pac was what? Born in New York, grew up in Baltimore, and lived in the Bay, and later moved to LA. And he claims LA, fortunately before he passed. But he's not from LA. He didn't go to high school in LA. If you went to high school in LA, you from LA. I don't think anybody that I named didn't go to high school somewhere in LA. So no, Pac didn't make the list. So I know some of you are probably, man, he put Tupac on his list. That's why. It ain't hating. I love Pac. Rest in peace. I think Kendrick has a chance to move up. Nipsey's probably solidified at 4. I don't really know what Kurupt could do to jump over Nipsey. I mean, he probably could, I guess, but I don't know, man. I implore all of you, go back and listen to Bullets Ain't Got No Names, Volume 2. Listen. Marathon, Victory Lap. I mean, listen, again, I don't want to spoil it because there are album reviews coming, as well as some stories that I have about Nipsey Hussle. But yeah, I think that's a very tough and very strong top 5. I think that's the best in LA. In conclusion, if you're not up on West Coast hip hop, do yourself a favor and get familiar. There are a ton of West Coast rappers and hip hoppers who are incredibly dope. I'm not about to start naming names because I know I'll forget someone. It's not all about gangbanging, but I mean, there's that element of what they talk about. But it's also just the stories. Because here's the thing. The thing that I loved about Ice Cube, the thing that I loved about Snoop, the thing that I loved about Dre, Ren, the thing that I loved about Eazy-E was that they were able to go into a booth and rap and transport me as a fan or Jay Fresh as a fan in Florence, South Carolina, and put us in Compton. That's not easy to do, right? At a time where their music really wasn't, I mean, think about it. They didn't get any airplay. NWA got no airplay. They had to do radio songs, I mean, they had to spruce up their dirty version of their songs. You know, Express Yourself never makes it to radio if they don't give a clean version. Straight Outta Compton never makes it to radio if they don't give a clean version. Shout out to the homie Jay Hammond. My boy Jay Hammond went to school with us. He had, remember back in the day, like you could put writing and stuff on your windshield. He had what did he have on it? It said Gangsta Gangster #1 on his on his windshield. Yeah, so we used to do stuff like, and that was in Florence. Again, we were kids, we didn't know no better. But yeah, I love the fact that they were able to transport us into their neighborhoods, into their lives, into their stories. And I think that's one of the things that makes them great. But if you're not up on West Coast hip hop, get familiar. There are a ton of rappers right now who are doing it, and they are laying the groundwork for the next generation of West Coast rap. And but the originators, I have to salute them. I have to salute Eazy-E. And I gotta thank Jay Fresh for paying $3 for that tape. It changed everything for the both of us. Ladies and gentlemen, that's going to do it for me. Thanks again for checking out this edition of the 12 Kyle Podcast. Be sure to subscribe to the podcast. You can find this podcast anywhere. We drop new episodes on Sundays and Thursdays at midnight. Make sure that you hit us up on YouTube. We have a YouTube channel. Subscribe. Hit the like and the notification. You can also leave comments as well. The great thing about the YouTube channel, you not only get video, but you get audio as well. And turn on those notifications because the YouTube episodes actually come out before the audio does. If you feel so inclined and you want to support us financially, hit us up on Cash App, $TWELVEKYLE. Or you can buy some merch. We got merch. Look in the description box. Click the link that says merch. You can find 12 Kyle Podcast hoodies, coffee mugs, T-shirts, posters, you name it, we got it. Also, if you follow us on social media, at 12 Kyle, at 12 Kyle Podcast, you can find us on Twitter X, Facebook, Instagram, Threads, as well as the TikTok. Again, that's going to do it for me. I am your boy 12 Kyle. I'll catch you guys next time. 5,000.
Thanks again for listening to this episode of the 12 Kyle Podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure that you hit the subscribe button and share this podcast with a friend who needs the 12 Kyle Podcast in their life. Every listen, every download, and every share helps us grow. Thanks for being a part of the 12 Kyle Podcast community. We appreciate your support. We will catch you next time. 5,000.